Welcome everybody to a Arch City Poker hand history video, a hand of the week video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a hand that was played, that I played in a 1-2 game that was pretty deep stack. It was a match the stack 1-2 game. Those play fairly deep. They don't play like traditional 1-2 games. And along with me to kind of go over this hand is Nick. Nick, how are we doing today?
Doing great.
Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and break this hand down, and I'll ask Nick basically his perspective on how the hand was played, maybe some suggestions of improvement or validation that maybe I did the right thing, right? That's always the goal. But the goal is to learn, get better, and hopefully viewers that are watching this video will be able to identify maybe strategies that are used within the ArchCityPoker.com website, things that we talk about on a regular basis, as how perhaps the game should be played if you want to be a winning poker player. So this is going to start off with Hero having King Queen under the gun +1. Again, this is a 1-2 game. Hero's got about 1,000 in his stack. The villain in this hand has about 1,000 in his stack, I believe. And under the gun is going to limp. Hero's going to make it 25. Again, this is a pretty deep game overall. So the sizing was standard. I would say most players maybe open 20 from where I am now, but it's not going to change the results of anybody calling or folding. Looks like the button is going to go ahead and call, the small blind is going to call, the big blind is going to fold, and the original limper is going to call. We're going to go 4 ways to a flop, and again, like I said, $25 open there, maybe big in some 1-2 games. And this one, as you can see, we're going 4 ways to a flop. Pretty standard, especially when stacks are as deep as they are. You could argue I can maybe go 30, maybe a little bit higher to try to get ahead of the amount of people that traditionally call, maybe a little bit wider pre-flop, but I think it's fine, generally speaking, just because I think I can outplay a lot of these guys post-flop. But Nick, here we are. There's really not a whole lot to talk about. It's just basically opening and going up against a bunch of callers, but any suggestions on anything yet?
No, I would tell you guys that are potential subscribers, or your subscribers to this YouTube platform, or you're a potential student. My thoughts going to the flop would be under the gun is likely a little bit more capped than the button in the small blind, just because he did limp and then call, whereas they cold called. That's the only thing I would keep in mind. Is I'm always just trying to make sure I have some kind of range in my opponents. Now, obviously, pre-flop, it's going to be really hard to narrow it down quite a bit just yet. But yeah, I think the sizing's fine. I mean, you guys are deeper. You said they were obviously calling that sizing, wide enough. So no further comment.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go to a flop 4 ways. We are out of position to the button. Flop is going to be queen high, queen of clubs, 10 of spades, 8 of diamonds. Some straights in there, no flushes yet. Yeah, it's a fine board. It's pretty good for our hand. Small blind is gonna elect to lead $40 into 100, little less than half pot. Under the gun, the original limper is gonna fold. Hero elects to just call, which I think is pretty standard that I'm gonna do, especially with somebody left to act after me. If we're heads up, there might be some wiggle room to raise this, but he's betting into 3 people with the pre-flop aggressor yet to act, which is Hero. So I am going to tread a little bit cautiously moving forward, so we're going to elect to call. I know we're a little bit deeper, and there's probably a little bit of room to punish maybe a jack or a 9 that's in there, but I think calling's fine. We'll see what he does in the turn in position here. The button ends up folding. So, Nick, what do we think so far about the hand?
So I like to try to think of all 3 options that we usually have. A lead, even if it is a little smaller, donk, or a lead, if you will, multi-way, tends to be relatively strong. So I think if I was ever to consider fold, I actually think that there is an possible argument for that. The only thing is I would need more like a larger sample size with this player to know that he's capable of, I guess, like being nitty enough to have only, like, let's say ace queen or better. But I think a lot of players here they'll bet out with like queen jack or like queen 9 suited, possibly a hand like jack 10. You don't see as much of that, but I mean, it's interesting with like the leads and the donks because they can mean different things for different players, but a lot of times, like if your heads up, it's just a lot of crap. To be honest, it's a lot of capped crap, if you will. Multi-way, I think it's definitely a tighter range. So like fold is not something I think with king queen that I'd be probably leaning towards, but I think there could be an argument for it. Now raise, I think is absolutely out of the question for me because I think his lead, even if it's small, like I said, is still into a four-person field on a texture that's relatively static. I know there's a lot of straight changing cards, but there's already like a straight possible with no flush draw. Um, and the fact that we still have the button left to act behind us, like, I mean, I think there's an argument there could be a faction of players that would say maybe raise small because then the button's never going to play anything other than straightforward towards that. Maybe you get him to fold some equity, but like, I think we do better and like risk less by just calling here and seeing what the button does first. Like we don't invest too much money to then fold if we had to like a button raise, even if we think it's a little rare. So yeah, I mean it's just an idea of like range your opponent, guys. I think this is a queen X hand quite a bit. It's possible that it's like a 10 in a straight draw, or 8 in a straight draw, like some kind of pairless draw hand. I don't think it's ever air. Um, I don't think it's like a gutter like ace jack or ace king or anything like that. So we have a pretty narrow range on him, but we think king queen's probably good enough to continue here. But I would like to call and see what the button does behind me. And I also want to see how small blind reacts to turn in us calling him. So that's how like the process I would go through, guys. Like I would range him, go through those options. I think fold and raise could be argued, but I think call is what I would ultimately decide on here.
Yeah, I actually mimicked a lot of what you're saying. With the button left act after me, he's leading into three people. I did think that we could be ahead of his range, but there's also a universe where pocket eights or pocket tens just wanted to call the 25. Maybe they're kind of leading into the field with a pretty strong hand. So I certainly didn't think raising was an option here. I did want to call, and more to your point, I want to see what he does on the turn. I feel like that's where people show themselves. And as the stack or the pot depth gets bigger, their bet sizings and what they represent becomes a little more transparent, right? If there's $1,000 in the middle and somebody bets $1,000, well, I would say history would dictate that most players don't bluff as the pot increases in size. But if there's a small pot, there's $15 in the middle and somebody bets $5. That could be anything, right? So
yeah,
as the
and I think the big thing, or sorry, Tony, I was gonna say that like valid points, and I think that the one thing we would make clear to you guys is that let's say this is $100 pot on the flop. Let's say he bets 75. I might consider folding king queen, honestly, but like the fact that and like I said, he could be hiding a little bit of his hand strength, but multi-way they tend to act much more straightforward in all aspects, whether it is frequency with which they bet or the sizing that they choose. And the fact that he bets, but he does still bet just 40, to me that still screams like maybe a one pair hand, or he's not quite sure, like he's kind of setting his price. So Tony's got the right idea here, guys. Like, well, we're deep and we have position. There are a lot of ways that we can like, and by a lot, I think we win this pot like over 95% of the time, guys. Like if we just call here and we play poker post flop on turn and river.
Yeah, legit to your point. If he leads for 100 into three people, I think I'm folding. I also think we can even take it a step back and go pre-flop. If the table is very three-betty, if stacks are maybe smaller, I might not even open king queen offsuit under the gun. I might save that for maybe a little bit later in position against maybe people that I know are more call happy, or I can isolate a little bit better heads up. But people weren't three betting in this table a whole lot. Everybody was cold calling a lot with a pretty wide range. So I think king queen off is a fine open from early position here. But again, it's about knowing your table, and for those listening, like knowing your villains. You can't play the same hands the same way at every table against every villain. So yep, we elect to call, Nick, and we see a turn, which is the 9 of hearts. It's going to be a rainbow texture on the flop. So queen 10, 8, 9 rainbow. And there is 182 in the middle. Villain elects to lead for 50 into 180. And this was kind of what my reason, like the validation for calling on the flop was, because now he's going from betting half pot to betting third pot, which at least to me, just screams that he's not super comfortable with his hand. He has something that he wants to. I don't know what he's thinking when he bets the 50, because I can't. That part's a little bit tricky. But from my point of view, with King Queen here, his hand is not there yet. I think, imagine a 1-2 player who binks the straight on the turn here. They want to size up, especially with stacks as big as they are. I don't think that they're trying to go for some thin value on the turn here. I think they make it 150, they make it 175, they make it 200, right? They start sizing up the size of their bets. So what I like to do is I took his $50 into about 180 as still maybe a hand that is maybe he could have binked some 2-pair hands that are like that had a straight draw on the flop. Maybe a hand like Queen 9, a hand like 9-10 that maybe had a gut shot, wanted to lead, bink 2-pair. So I wanted to raise, and I elected to raise to 250. So he bet $50. Hero makes it 250, and I think a lot of live low stakes players might think raise is a good option here, but I think that their sizing might be a little different. And then I think to myself, well, as the hero in this hand, what can I do to make villain really uncomfortable? I don't think he has a jack here. So what sizing would it take to make a hand that's a non-jack hand really uncomfortable? And I think 250 is a good sizing. And if he's got it, I think he's just going to rip it. I don't think there's going to be a question of what he does, so I can probably fold. If he elected to just call, I think my plan is going to be to really just bomb and shove any like non-pairing cards, I would say. But Nick, I elected to make it 250, and before I kind of show what the result is of the small blind, those were just kind of my thoughts. I didn't think he had a jack. It felt like he could have maybe turn 2 pair is kind of what it felt like. I don't think he had a set. I think sets still size up a little bit. But Nick, that's the line I took so far. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I would range him now as like that sizing kind of tells me he has like Queen 10, Queen 9, maybe 10-8 suited, not as much of that, and then Ace Queen and King Queen maybe. I don't even know if the 1-pair hands are going to bet now though. Yeah, I think turning this hand into a bluff is the only option. I think a lot of you would either think call or fold and never think to turn like a made hand into a bluff. And that's where I used to still do a decent job of it back in the day. But once I started playing a lot of PLO, like over a decade ago, I realized that like that game forces you to turn like sets in 2 pairs and like some and flushes into bluffs. And that kind of carried over to No Limit to me to where like, if I think that a hand doesn't have showdown value, but I think that he has a cap range, then there's no reason to not turn more of those hands into bluffs. So the only thing I would nitpick here with Tony is that I think we leave not quite as much room on the river as we would want. And the other thing is like, if we get him to fold, let's say like Queen 9 suited now or 10-9 suited, like if he has possible, some of like those 10x or hands on the flop that he bet with that had straight draws with him, and now he has 10-9 or whatever. Any of those, like we're really looking at like the 2 pairs bucket of his range. Like that's pretty much exactly what he has, I think. I honestly like this is probably a decent sizing to where like somebody could call. I actually though, like if we're gonna kind of kill 2 birds 1 stone here, I might go like 175 or 200 because I think just like a little less to leave a little bit more room on the river if we need pot or more to get him off of a hand like 2 pairs, but also incentivizes him to put more money in now with those hands that might fold to like maybe 250. Like I think if you go any larger than this, they're probably folding a lot. Like it's hard. Like they usually just think about their hands, guys. Like that's what you do in live low stakes. A lot of times the mistakes that you guys will make will just be thinking way too much about your own hand. But like on a 1-liner like this, it's really hard for Tony to like really rep bluffs. Like there aren't bluffs in the eyes of a low stakes player because there's no intuitive bluff. Like a bluff is very visible. Usually it's like a flush draw or a straight draw, or it's just air. And, I don't think a lot of players would think that Tony's doing this with air here. So like, it just looks like a straight a lot. And so, yeah, it's fine if he folds now. I would like him to feel comfortable, honestly, calling like something like 175, and then we put in like 820 into 7 or something like that on the river, and we get him to fold then for sure. Like we know exactly where he's at right now. So I think Tony's played the hand very well. I mean, like probably give him an A plus if he goes a little smaller here, Tone, and maybe we incentivize, and maybe he does call you here. I don't actually remember the result of this hand, so hopefully you got the call and then you can shove on him on river. But yeah, I mean, if you get the fold now, it's a win. I think it's just a nice little bonus on top and like an elite played hand, if you will, if we go a little bit less than 250 and we leave a little bit more room on the river.
Yeah, I thought about that. So if I make it 250 and he calls, it's going to put 700 in the middle, which is basically gets the SPR to 1, which is what my personal goal. Like it's I'm a little on the nose about it. Like it's I always try to get it at 1, not like a little less than 1 or a little over than 1. I try to like get it to 1. And that $250 raise, it's designed to drive a lot of fold equity, and I'm trying to get 2 pair hands to fold. If I made it 150 or 175, I think 2 pair hands, I think he might call.
You want him to call though, right? Like if I'm working with you, if you're my student in this hand, and this is how I'm showing you guys, this is how we do this. Even pros, even though like Tony's a pro now and he's co-operator of this site, we always can get better. And so like this is a spot where I would tell him like, you're doing a really good job, but to get to like an elite level, I think really good players here would want somebody to call here because they know exactly where they're at. And they know as long as that board doesn't pair up, which it likely won't, we get them to put in like 150 or 175. So we get an extra 100 to 125 out of this part of his range that we're just trying to get to fold now. So like if we're on the river, guys, like if it's deuce, queen 10, 8, 9, yes, we need to put in a massive raise to get him to fold right now for sure. So like, yeah, I agree, Tone. It's getting him to fold now is a win, but it's not the biggest win. Like we can do better than this. And this is where we would, if I was working with you guys, if Tony's working with you guys, and like this is him and I working on this stuff every day, like sending each other hands back and forth. Like this is the kind of interaction, the kind of discourse, the kind of instruction you're going to get over at archstatepoker.com. Or if you want to take it a step further and you wanted either like one-on-one coaching or possibly even like group coaching from us, like that's something we've discussed. Like this is the kind of analysis and the kind of breakdown you're going to get. And I'm going to be candid. I think it's probably better than 99% of the instruction you're going to get that's out there, because I know a lot of the guys that do it. I've been in that industry for a long time. Like it's a lot of like solver printouts. It's a lot of just, I think it's a lot of bad instruction, guys. Like there are some good ones out there, but like you're not going to get it like this. And so this is why I implore you to, come over to the site and check us out, because you're just missing out on a lot here.
Yeah. Although I did try to drive max fold equity here. Not max. Like max would be a big bet. But if he did call, the plan still is to jam any non-board pairing river. So the strategy is the same as what you're saying. I guess I also gave him a chance to fold on the turn. I probably missed. Yeah, I do think he calls a 175.
Yeah, me too. That's why I said it.
I do think he calls that. And then if the river's like a 5, I do think he folds. Yeah, and then
he absolutely will.
And if the river, if it does end up pairing the board in some way, shape, or fashion, I bet you he still checks it, and we get to show down top pair. And it's a little not expecting to win a whole lot. But so we do make it 250. Nick, he ends up folding, and we just take down the about $150 pot. So not too bad. Probably could have been a little bit better, but next. So that's hand 1. We're going to go ahead and we're going to step into hand number 2, and there might be a little bit of a skip in the video that you're watching, but we're just going to hop right into it. Give us 1 second. All right, everybody. Now we're going to step into hand 2 for the hand history video of the week. And this game is going to be, or this hand rather, is going to be a part of a 2-5 game that was a little bit deeper. It's about 1,000 effective here with the villain. Within this game, within the way the hand is structured, you're going to see that there's a $10 button straddle. That's where I was. And I elected to straddle the button for $10. The way the button straddle works is action starts with the small blind, then it works its way around. Pretty overpowered straddle option, I think. So I like to do it more often than not. So Hero just so happens to wake up with Ace of Hearts, Ace of Diamonds. Pretty good, I would say most people would agree. And it goes and folds all the way to the hijack, who limps for the $10. And the cutoff, who is the main villain in this hand, he elects to make it $50. And to this point in the hand history knowledge that I have of him, he was pretty solid. He never did anything that was too outlandish. Probably made some minor mistakes in some other hands, but nothing big, nothing major. He maybe limped a couple more times than I would recommend, or maybe called a little bit too wide. But overall, he's doing just fine. So he makes it 50. Hero, I like to 3-bet, which I think everybody would agree you 3-bet here with aces to 150. The hijack folds, and then this is where it gets a little interesting. And he 4-bets to 375. Again, I think that this is like a big decision time where I think a lot of live low stakes players would have different ideas of how to proceed. I think that the gut reaction that most players would want to take is this is a shove. And I don't think that you're wrong against a lot of people, against a lot of different types of villains, because they're just not 4-betting and then trying to fold. I think within some of these better players and some of these deeper stacked games, there is a little bit of lighter 4-betting going on. And I thought in the moment, if I 5-bet jam, I think that the only hand that calls me is kings. I don't think queens calls. I block ace king pretty hard. Not even sure ace king would call. Jack's probably not going to call. So I think if I raised here, Nick, I'm folding out just everything that my villain has except for kings. And if I call, I get to play a heads-up position with a diminished SPR with basically the nuts. And I get to keep a hand like queens in there. I get to keep a hand like ace king. I get to keep jacks in there. All the fun stuff. So I elected to just flat the 375. And we're going to go to a flop. So Nick, what are we thinking so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends on if you guys are in a 1-3 or 2-5 and somebody 4-bets, they've like almost never have bluffs. If you have somebody though that is capable of 4-bet bluffing, then yeah, I think you need to alter your strategy a little bit to where I think Tony's right as far as like I'll flat a lot of aces and kings in this spot, because if we put it in, you are probably going to get a lot of hero folds from like queens, jacks, ace, king. And if they do happen to have any ace X or like king X bluffs that are the pretty common 4-bet bluffs, they're just going to fold those as well. So I go about it pretty exploitively where like if I had ace 5 suited here, I would jam on them because of what Tony said. Like I think they're going to overfold a lot of their range. And if you get called by kings, you still have like around like 33% equity with like an ace basically, or it's a little bit less than that. But regardless, like it's a good spot to kind of exploitively shove like that. And you'll have basically just like that one combo, so to speak. It's even if you think like, and I'm doing it exploitively, I'm not even doing it with balance, because I do think just flatting with aces or kings here is a huge thing with the stack depth. Now, if these guys were like 5,000 effective somehow, then I would put in a 5-bet. But yeah, Tony, I think calling is the only play here, because I range our opponent without having too much info on them is having a lot of the combos we just discussed, and I don't want those to fold out. Like we destroy those post flop. So let's try to get the rest of it on the flop or turn here.
Yeah, and we talk about different villain types in a lot of the poker content at archcitypoker.com. If this is like the figurative old man coffee, right? The guy who doesn't play a whole lot and then now he's 4-betting, I'm going to 5-bet aces because I know that he's never 4-bet folding anything. So yeah, it's very much villain dependent. If this is Nick 4-betting me, I'm going to flat here with aces because I know he's going to probably look at where the 3-bet's coming from, which is on the button, and he knows that I'm capable of 3-betting wider, so he's going to 4-bet wider, which against Nick, I would probably flat with aces here too. So it's all villain dependent. I think the higher skilled villain and the more maneuverability that you think that they're willing to make, I think it just gives you more options to play poker, and it's what makes this game so fun. So I go ahead and elect to just call, and we see a pretty darn good flop, right? We see ace of clubs, jack of hearts, 2 of hearts. Top set. I think that's the dream, right? Usually I never run that good, so I won the lottery in my mind. Villain elects to lead for 115 into about 750-ish. And Nick, actually really, in the moment of the hand, I thought this was a really good sizing. I think that it needs to be really small. I think that checking is maybe not an option that I would do with almost all of my range. If there's any type of fold equity that I could ever have from a hand like queens or kings, I don't think maybe they're going to fold all the time, but I'm going to lead here because I would think that the button who just cold calls the 375, our range might be ahead of their range, right? Because I would have guessed that kings and aces rip it more often than not. So when I see him lead for 115, I don't think I want to raise here. I think I have this board somewhat locked up. I'm obviously scared of like hearts, but I also have the ace of hearts. Top set here, I think if he's got a hand like jacks, if he's got a hand like... I honestly thought he had a hand like kings or queens here in the moment. And if I raise here, I'm just going to fold those hands out. Like, it's pretty easy to identify. So, Nick, I elect to just flat here and just call the 115. I don't think that there's really any other options. We lock up the board pretty hard for the most part. So, yeah, Nick, we elect to just call.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple again, guys. Like, we go through the process, like, let's range them. It's very likely that somebody that's 4-betting and then betting this small has probably studied up on the game a little bit. This is very likely a range bet. So I think it's like a lot of ace king, a lot of kings, queens. Now, because we have 2 aces, it's easier to remove a lot of like the ace king, ace queen, maybe ace jack suited, ace 10 suited if he's truly like a competent player that can like 4-bet bluff a little bit. If that's the case, he could have some king queen suited, king 10 suited. It's possible. I would say more often than not, this is a lot of kings and queens. Yeah, for that reason, like, so then we range him. We ask ourselves, well, we know fold's obviously not an option, but like, is raising an option? Like, a lot of you would look at this board and be like, well, there's straight draws and flush draws available. Guys, like, the vast majority of the time, if you think about like the kind of hands that your opponents are going to have here, like, they don't have straight draws probably, and they don't have like flush draws that we care about because we also have the ace of hearts. The only flush draw I can have is like king, queen of hearts. So I think that when we range him as such, a raise doesn't really accomplish anything. Like, we want him to keep putting money in with the part of his range, which is everything that we smoke. If we raise here, we just fold out like kings and queens that, yeah, they probably don't put any more money in the pot, but we're going to stack the ace X hands anyway. We're going to stack middle set anyway. There's no card that can come on the turn that's going to change either player's opinion of anything because there's too much money in the pot at that point. So if there's any hope that he is capable of bluffing, we want to keep him in there. And so, yeah, Tony, I would just elect a call. And just real quick, like looking at it from villain's perspective, because Tony brought that up a little. I mean, I think checking is actually exploitively a really good option for him, because what will end up happening is the player in position, very likely, it's a 4-bet pot. Players in low stakes games and 4-bet pots play incredibly straightforward. I think they'll check back a lot of kings and queens. And when they do that, then you find out exactly where they're at. And you have, obviously, like, if their cards are face up at that point, you can play turns a lot easier. So I'm not saying that his bet is incorrect in practice. Like, I think there's definitely room for it, just because in theory, he's supposed to bet his range for small here. Like, when he 4-bets pre-flop, his range is so strong, and he should like really be, I mean, like, so incredibly strong on this board that like he really should never be checking. But I think exploitively check actually works really well. But you guys aren't going to end up in this spot too often. We'll talk about it a little bit more over in Arch City Poker. But yeah, Tony, I think call for us as the hero is the only option here after weighing all the options after ranging him.
Yeah. And I want to highlight, and maybe I miscommunicated it. I was saying that if he's going to bet, I really liked his small sizing. I think if I had a hand like kings or queens, I'm not if I had his hand and I had aces, I'm not sure if I'm betting a whole lot here.
Yeah.
But if I am going to bet, it's definitely going to be smaller. So
yeah, I think guys like 4-bet pots, like the way that the SPR, the way it's going to be is generally like 1 or less. If you're deep enough, it could be a little more than that, but somewhere between 10% and 25% pot is going to be pretty standard. So his sizing is pretty good.
yeah. So we see a turn, which is the Queen of Hearts. In real time, I actually thought this was a pretty nasty little card. Just because it does bring in the front flush. I thought it was nice because I did worry about King, Queen of Hearts. So with me having...
I think this is the greatest card ever.
I know, I got a little squeamish because I'm just like, there's another heart. What combination of BS am I going to lose to today? Is kind of like what my heart went to. But I think just kind of like how everybody does, what we tell everybody is, like, initial reactions aside, after he makes his decision of going all in, which is what he does, Nick, I actually sit and tank for a little bit. I know this is like a slam dunk call, but it's a big pot. And I preach this in like Art City Poker videos, like, it doesn't matter if it's an easy decision. Like, I think about it. I think about what's the board? What's my hand? What are my outs? What is he doing this with? And I think about those things before I make the decision. And I know probably most people watching are like, this is an easy call. You have top set, you have a backdoor straight draw, you have the backdoor flush draw. So, and I knew that in the moment, but I just like to take a minute and just think about that stuff. So, and I recommend everybody else does the same thing. But he likes to shove, which I think really is really his only option. If there's no like another $115 bet size. It's ripping it or just checking. So he does elect to rip it. I do elect to call Nick, which I think is, again, standard. What I think he has at this point, thought maybe queens. I thought maybe jacks that are trying to like really take advantage of a hand like ace of hearts, king of clubs, something that, maybe he thinks he obviously doesn't have the ace of hearts. So he would be doing this thinking that I had the ace of hearts and he can really pick off like a one pair with a nut straight draw type of hand. But Nick, we elected to call, and before I show the river, what are we thinking?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's fine for you guys to take your time, make sure you go through again, like range him appropriately. So if we range him appropriately pre-flop to flop, it shouldn't be that hard here. This is like, as soon as I forgot about this turn when Tony told me about this hand before, and I thought he played it great, but like this turn it's literally the greatest turn ever. And it looks like a bad turn, but guys, if you think about it, his flop range is probably a lot of queens and kings as part of like his range bet. And then it's also a lot of ace king. And if he has some ace queen suited, ace king, especially if he has the king of hearts, is never folding. It'll put it in. Pocket queens now makes a set, which we're stacking because it would have checked on every other turn. Pocket kings, if it has the king of hearts, might do this as like a semi bluff or whatever. Like they just don't know what to do. They're just going to put it in. It's literally the greatest card ever for Tony. But yeah, I think that I would range him as having sets of queens and jacks, and then some ace king and like some ace queen, perhaps. It is a low stakes game, so it might not be like as much ace queen. And then like the only like a competent player could potentially have, I guess, king 10 suited. They wouldn't have king queen suited here because like that doesn't make a ton of sense now. But yeah, I think once we get to that conclusion, pretty easy call. And yeah, curious to see what he had because I actually forget now.
So the river is the 4 of hearts, pretty wonderful card. It basically gives us the nuts, and he shows king 10 of spades. Yeah. Yep. So he turned straight.
Just in case he had king 10 of hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
So yeah, he actually turned the straight, and I really admire, if I like had to reflect back, I really admire his 4-bet with king 10 suited here, because that's exactly the type of hand I would have done it with against an opponent like myself. So after this hand was done, I had to take notes of it pretty quickly because I just really admired a lot of what this villain's play was like. And I thought he did a great job. I just happened to have it, which is just really lucky for me, but I think he did a great job. So yeah, Nick, king 10 of spades. I didn't really expect it, to be honest with you. I thought I'd maybe see a king of hearts here.
Yeah, I
being
think
shown.
I remember telling you now that this was one of those rare hands where I thought both players actually played the hand really well. I think he played the hand. I think Villain played the hand pretty close to as perfect as you could play it, and I think you played it as close to, I mean, pretty much perfect. So like, um, I think if you guys play a hand like this, or even if you're not in this hand, and you see that somebody's capable of 4-bet bluffing with King 10, you need to understand that you'll want to see more before you assign this player as like a truly great player. But that's a sign to me that this player likely is quite competent, because like 1% of live low stakes players will find a 4-bet bluff with King 10 suited, King Jack suited, Ace 10 suited, stuff like that. So I think Tony likely put it in his mind and in his notes that there will need to be adjustments made pre-flop with this guy. Like we are going to need a 5-bet bluffing range for sure. And then the thing is, we talked about this, like we exploitively, we called the 4-bet with aces. I would, against a player that once this hand would finish, I would think to myself, I still would flat some aces and kings against this player, but I would actually start considering some 5-bet shoves with at least a small percentage of them, only because you probably, like, this is one of those really rare scenarios where, like, you probably would need a little balance if you played enough sessions with this player, because you can't just like rip ace five of whatever, like ace five suited, and then not have it when he does like call with like his kings and queens and jacks or ace king or whatever. So there's this dynamic that if Tony plays with this villain enough times, that's going to develop with these guys, where it actually is one of like the 1% times that it starts to become more of like a GTO thing. And so like that's something that we kind of frown upon, that kind of play overall in the low stakes games. Like, you 99% of the time do not need it, but this is one of those rare times where like we would like to have some semblance of what a little bit of balance looks like, just in case we do play like in a bigger game and a bigger pot with a player like this. But overall though, guys, like I said, this is a very rare occurrence. You very likely will see the other combos that we mentioned at Showdown when he turns his hand over. But yeah, very well played hand by both players. Very cool hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought this was a good one. Took notes of it right away. Unfortunately, he just got the raw end of the deal, but yeah, every once in a while I get to bank a couple cards. Every once in a while, it doesn't happen.
And to be fair, he was fortunate on the turn. So
right.
you just, both players, like, I think we don't want to be so results oriented. Like, I think, like we said, just analyzing the process and how both players played it, like, this is some really good poker here. Like, this is what we're talking about. This is what I would like to see you guys be able to do from either position in this hand.
Cool. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up. We had 2 hands this week. Hopefully we can keep the tradition going. If you're brand new to this YouTube channel, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment. Tell us what you think. Would you have played any of these hands differently? And if so, tell us about it and why. If you're brand new, go to archcitypoker.com, become an Arch City Poker member. We are in the process of uploading a ton of content for our members. So please go ahead, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your day.